Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Tim Kirby Russia. I'm going to get right to it because today we have Lucas Leiras who is with us, and he just wrote an article for VT Foreign Policy, absolutely fascinating, entitled "Western Mercenaries Participating in Attacks Against Russian Borders." So, Lucas, could you tell us where did you get the information for all of these revelations that are in this article? Where does this info come from?
Thanks for having me, Tim. Well, I have been in Belgrade last month. I was in Russia in March for all the purposes, for the events when the bombings in Belgrade started, and we decided to organize a trip within the BRICS Journalist Association. And
Mm-hmm.
I was coming to Belgrade with my friend Natalia Prokopienko.
Mm-hmm.
We were there together to get information, collect information about what was happening there. And we had the opportunity to talk to some local military and civilians who gave us very good information, both about the nationalities of the mercenaries fighting there and about the fact that the so-called Russian volunteer corps is not really Russian. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about that, but and some civilians who are witnessing the fightings showed me some belongings they collected among the camp, the field after the hostilities, and they showed me many things. For example, written in Swedish and belongs to
Mm-hmm.
foreign mercenaries who were injured or killed by the Russian fighters. And we were able to see that the real culprit for these attacks on the borders are foreign mercenaries fighting for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
In international media, it is said, or it's Ukraine or Russian dissidents, Russian partisans who chose to fight for
Yeah.
Kiev. But it's not true. What's happening there is real invasion of foreign mercenaries fighting for Ukraine.
Now, let me ask. This is sort of an important nuanced question here, because throughout the entire war, the Russian media has sort of portrayed it as you have the core, sort of Ukrainian forces, and well, after so many of them have been, killed, there's, basically conscripts now and mercenaries, and the mercenaries are a minority. Okay. Now, are you saying that a lot of these forces that tried to go over the border, or I think it was even earlier this year, it may have been towards the end of last year, but doesn't matter. Were they then majority foreign fighters, or were the foreign fighters just a small sort of 10, 20% of those who went and made these attacks?
Yes, I'm not sure about the real numbers because it's also sensitive information. I think
Mm,
Russia is trying to prevent this information from coming to public about the real number of foreigners in order to avoid escalation. Russia is clearly trying to avoid escalation with the West,
mm-hmm.
but there is a lot of mercenaries there, and I think it's a way Kiev used not be considered a culprit for terrorist attacks. They use such they say it's a Russian dissident organization, Russian partisan organization. It's not. It's made up of foreign mercenaries, but it's unofficial. Anyway, it's unofficial. They are attacking, fighting. They are fighting for Kiev, but they are attacking civilians, and Kiev avoids to be considered to really responsible for these attacks
Mm-hmm.
because such fake organizations, such as the Russian Volunteer Corps or the Russian Freedom Legion, so they claim responsibility for the attacks. And in this way, Kiev is considered not responsible. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the real numbers. But what I'm sure is that there is a lot of mercenaries there, because not only the information I got there is important to emphasize, but also the recent news. Because this week there was news about an American soldier who was fighting in Belgrade and was killed by the Russian forces. There were many videos circulation in internet showing the moment of Americans were caught on camera, but Russian authorities did not confirm this incident, and I'm sure Russia is avoiding to confirm such occasions because it wants to avoid escalation in the proxy war with NATO.
Now, one thing is, I'm looking at your article here, and of course, because I'm a graphic designer, I always like the pictures, sometimes more than reading. But one picture really stands out. Is it's the logo of the European Security Academy. Now, I try to be a pretty astute person, but this is honestly the first time I've ever heard of that. What is the European Security Academy, and why were those notebooks on the bodies of the foreign fighters?
Yes, it's a military academy in Poland, which is very famous for training for foreign mercenaries. Some years ago, there was a report by the Bellingcat showing that this academy was used to train Azov battalion fighters.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an academy already known for training people who are fighting in Ukraine. And what we are seeing in this case is that this possible switch mercenary who was injured or killed on the battlefield
Mm-hmm.
was trained in this academy before being sent to the front lines. And there was it's a very interesting information because it shows that there is really a network of Western countries sending mercenary troops to fight in Ukraine. So he switched and he was trained in Poland and he was sent to the front lines to fight for Ukraine. This shows that the war is already internationalized. It's not a war between Russia and Ukraine, but between Russia and the West.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a big network of agencies cooperation with the Kiev regime to fight Russia.
Now, maybe you might not be able to comment on this, but were these men sort of properly equipped? And if they were equipped, were they equipped with like the same gear as the Ukrainians, or did they look visually different, have their own gear from their own countries of origin, so on and so forth?
Sorry, could you repeat, please?
Yeah. Did these the foreign soldiers who were killed? Did they have like the sort of standard Ukrainian gear, or did they have essentially the uniforms and weapons and equipment of their country of origin?
Yes, I talked to some soldiers who say that their weapons are a bit different from the regular Ukrainian weapons. And some of them use special forces, American special forces typical weapons. I'm not an expert in weapons to say about this so deeply, but I talked to some military who were very sure that these guys were not using regular Ukrainian armed weapons. And about uniforms, well, they use this Russian dissident uniforms, and this is a bit different from the regular arm, but it's not so clear in all occasions because there are also some occasions in which they are using Ukrainian armed uniforms and some other different stuff like pets, and I'm not so expert in talking about this. But the most important information is that they use weapons which are very specifically from some Western special forces units, which are not so typical from Ukrainian army.
Now, in these diaries, was there any insight into the motivations of these guys? Is this a thing where they're actually real soldiers who are ordered to do this? Or they're just mercenaries and they're just doing it for the money and they don't care, they just want money? Or are these people who actually are somewhat ideological and they don't care about playing dress up, pretending to be disgruntled Russians?
Yes. There are basically three types of people who come to fight for Ukraine. One is really ideologically motivated. Many neo-Nazi ultranationalists from Western countries who went to fight for Ukraine. The other type of people is indeed for professional military, professional soldiers who are hired by mercenary groups, by PMCs, and sent to fight for Ukraine. And there are those who are not professional soldiers, but poor people, very poor people from mainly from the global south who are attracted by the money to fight for Ukraine, thinking they will be back into their country soon with a lot of money. It's very common to see, for example, in my country, there is a lot of Brazilian who died fighting for Ukraine. So
Wow.
there are these three types of people, and I'm not sure about the guys I got information. I can't see if this Swedish guy was really professional or mercenary, neo-Nazi mercenary, I don't know. But th- these three types of people are fighting that, and most of the foreign mercenaries fighting for Ukraine can be described in at least one of these types.
Those categories. Gotcha. Now, the Russian then forces that you talked to, I'm just kind of wondering what they told you because I've always found this. On the one hand, this whole idea of this like Russian partisan or sort of militia corps that's going to come and fight Putin. Well, it harkens back to World War II and a group called the Vlasovцы under General Vlasov, who sided with Hitler's friends right during the war. And but that whole image, and they even use the same logo, like the same shield with the same type of flag and all that. But that group of people is despised in Russia. So it's kind of did any of the Russians kind of explain to you like, or did you have any discussions about what's the sort of marketing behind this? Because it makes no sense to me. Or do you have some insights?
Yes, the big information I got is that this organization is absolutely fake. They simply don't exist. This is what Russian military say. They say that the leaders of these organizations are well-known Russian neo-Nazis who emigrated to Ukraine because they would be arrested in Russia. But the soldiers, the military personnel, is not made of Russian citizens. It's about Ukrainian commandos, Western mercenaries. So people were not Russian. So above all, we need to understand that according to information I received, these organizations simply don't exist. They serve as a kind of proxy for the Kiev regime to not being considered responsible for terrorist attacks. So these organizations attack Russian civilian areas, and Kiev doesn't claim responsibility for these attacks. So it's so the culprits are Russian. So this is the way they work. They work as proxy forces for the Kiev regime, but they are made up of Ukrainian commandos, intelligence, and foreign mercenaries. So some Russian military also were talking to me that they believe these organizations are really under the orders of the GUR, the Ukrainian military intelligence, because the Ukrainian military intelligence is the part of the Ukrainian state responsible for the terrorist attacks. They're responsible for attacks against the border regions and against public figures. So they think that these organizations are fake Russian organizations under the control of Ukrainian military intelligence.
And now you kind of hinted at this, but again, we have to be clear about this because this is a very important issue. Was the objective of these then fake organizations to just kill people and terrorize the public, or were they actually trying to come in and take territory and defend it and actually kind of create a new front in the war against Russia?
Yes, they have a big marketing purpose. So when they act against the Russian forces in this war, they make it appear that there is a big dissidence against the Russian government, and that many Russians are trying to fight the government and fight in favor of Ukraine. So it's a kind of public relations stunt against Russia. This is their main purpose in this war. They are not able to invade Russian territory and occupying ground positions for so long. So they attack every day, and they are repelled, they are killed. But this is not the purpose of their attacks. Their attacks is mainly aimed at promoting terror against Russian civilians and working as a kind of market public relations stunt, because they also are trying to make Russian people turn against their own government. So with these terrorist attacks becoming so frequent, they think people tend to be against the government because people will be feeling unsafe and unsatisfied with their government. So this is also purposed by the Kiev regime to use these militias to create unsatisfaction, to create dissidence among Russian people. It's failing because we can see with the results of the election process in Russia that the most affected Russian regions by the conflict were very pro-Putin, pro-governments, because they see the government as a hope against this terror. But having so, the Ukrainian regime and its sponsors are resorting to terrorism as a way to create dissidence among Russian civilians.
Wow. Sometimes I'm at a loss for words. But one thing I need to ask you, though, before we move on to maybe another topic, well, this is kind of another topic, is you mentioned that you're a BRICS journalist. Now, I think some people are going to write me, Tim, what is a BRICS journalist? How does someone become a BRICS journalist? How do you get accreditation, as everyone likes to say in the industry? How did that come about? And what kind of status is that?
Yes, there is an organization called BRICS Journalist Association, which it is recently founded. I'm one of the co-founders of this organization.
Oh, wow.
It's Russian-based, and people who are interested in become part of this organization, journalists from all around the world, not necessarily from BRICS country, but people who are supporter of BRICS, or pro-BRICS, having, if not living in BRICS country, can apply to be a part of our organization, can contact me. We can put my contact in this video. People can rate me, and we'll be giving all the necessary information to cooperate with us. We were recently founded, our organization recently founded, and we have a lot of cooperation projects between our BRICS countries and journalists from all around the world to give true information to people who are unable to see information by the the common means because of censorship and so on. So our organization was responsible for this press tour in Belgrade, and we were able to collect very good information, doing articles, videos, interviews, and many people were informed about the reality of the Belgrade front thanks to our work. So everyone who's interested in become part of our BRICS association can reach me, and we will give you all the necessary information.
All right, fantastic. I'll put the contact information and a link to your article in the description. But you have many articles, and I just opened up some of the other ones that you've written here, and it surprised me. Finland supports an open war against Russia. Could you tell me, do you mean the Finnish government is seriously considering trying to make a move into Russia, or who exactly in Finland supports a war in Russia? What is this here?
Yes, there was this this recent wave of anti-Russian, radical anti-Russian statements by some Western leaders, which is being led by French President Emmanuel Macron. He's basically encouraging all the Western leaders to become even more pro-Russian, anti-Russian, sorry. And in this way, there was recently a Finnish government. I don't remember now. I think it was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Finland who made a pronouncement saying that the West, NATO, cannot be afraid of a real war with Russia because if necessary, it will be done. So I think that the West is now in the very big despair because it's losing the war, and there is no other way to keep this war going on because Ukrainian forces are running out. There is nothing to be done now with Ukrainians approx. So what's the next step? So they will have to choose between going to real war or withdrawing or retreating and accepting to negotiate the reformulation of the world order with Russia, the multipolarization of the geopolitics. So, but some Western leaders are trying to promote themselves politically and not anti-Russian, but as kind of warriors of the West. And this is the case of Emmanuel Macron. and he's encouraging other people to become even more anti-Russian. This is the case of Finland, of the Baltic states, and Poland, all these countries which have become absolutely anti-Russian over time. They are now even more dangerous in their actions. So I don't see Finland going to war with Russia, but I see the West losing their own control over the situation, because they are creating a very hostile scenario. And in this scenario, it's very possible for some Western countries to take decisions without the authorization of the NATO leaders. So I'm sure the United States currently does not went a real direct war with Russia. But I'm not sure about the Baltic states. I'm not sure about Finland. They are absolutely fanatical in their anti-Russian
Well, yeah,
hate.
Lucas, I just want to tell you that I really hope that you're right, and I hope that a lot of these sort of like hints or suggestions of this like greater war, World War III, is all just some sort of empty grand virtue signaling. That would be fantastic if that's where this is all going. I think in sort of my heart of hearts, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, but you never know. Any day, Macron could make that critical mistake and send 20,000 troops over the border, and they'll get blown up, and we'll see what happens next. But for now, I think it's then, well, we call it virtue signaling in a polite way, but in all actuality, it's a lot of butt kissing. But anyways, Lucas, how about a last question here before we get going? Could you maybe tell our audience some other things that when you were in the Belgorodskaya region, when you were in the city and you talked to people, just what were some other impressions you had? What were maybe some pieces of information that really opened your eyes? Because not all of us are going to get the chance to go visit that region. So what did you see? What did you hear?
Yes, my most shocking impression was about the Russian way, Russian spirit, warrior spirit, and resilience. Because it was before the elections. I was there on March 14, and one day before the start of the elections, and the real reason for so much bombings in that region at that time was the elections. The Kiev regime wanted to prevent elections from going on, and when I was in the city, I was following the attacks going through the affected regions. I had the opportunity to talk to some victims, people who lost their cars, their homes, and they simply said, "We don't care about it. So we will vote for our governments because our country is strong. We can win. We will win, and the enemy wants us to be afraid. So we will not be afraid." So many Russian people had the same response for my questions, and this was very shocking for me because these people were not afraid. So they lost their things. They were under a very dangerous situation, under very high risk, but they were absolutely confident that the country is able to protect them, and they felt in this Dutch to participate in the election process because that's their Dutch as Russians, as Russian citizens, and they didn't want to avoid participation in normal civilian life because of the terror the Kiev regime was imposing on them. So the Russian force, the Russian strength, the Russian resilience, resistance, warrior spirit was the most impressive thing I saw in Belgrade. I was recently in December in Donbass, and I was in Lugansk. Really, I was very safer in Lugansk than in Belgrade. Belgrade is much more risky, much more dangerous now, and people in both places were showing the same strength, the same spirit of resistance against the terror and resilience, capacity to keeping their lives normal despite all the terror they were suffering. So this was very impressive to me.
Oh, so, but how is Lugansk safer? Have they been able to push the front line so far away that they can't really hit Lugansk anymore? Is that it?
Yes. Look, I was in the capital of Lugansk, Lugansk city, and also in Alchevsk. These are
Uh-huh.
regions. The area surrounded these both cities are absolutely Russian controlled. So it's
Mm-hmm.
safer to be there than in Belgrade, because in
Right.
Belgrade, if you cross the border, the Ukrainian positions are immediately. So
Yeah.
so Belgrade now is under very very unsafe for people near the borders. It's under risk. In Lugansk, in the center of the LPR, it's safer to stay there. That was my impression. Also, impression of my friend Natalia, who was with me. She also went to Donbas recently and had the same impressions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lucas Leiras. Great interview, great work, and keep it up, man. It's a tough, depressing job, but you're doing God's work. We all appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.